Have you ever given something small, just a sandwich, a smile, a kind word, without expecting anything in return, only to find your whole life changing because of it? Stay with me. This story will show how one simple act of kindness from a struggling young waitress touched the heart of a grieving millionaire, and how love, hope, and destiny found a way in the most unexpected place. Make sure you watch till the end, and if this story moves you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more emotional tales just like this. Chapter 1: The Sandwich That Started It All. The diner was mostly empty that rainy Tuesday afternoon. The air was thick with the smell of frying bacon and freshly brewed coffee. A faded jukebox hummed old tunes from the corner, playing to no one in particular. Behind the counter, 23-year-old Leah wiped down a glass for the third time, her apron stained with syrup and exhaustion. She hadn't eaten her lunch yet. Half a tuna sandwich wrapped in foil and tucked beneath the counter. Leah had dreams once. She wanted to open a little bookstore cafe, the kind with mismatched furniture, fairy lights, and shelves bursting with second-hand novels. But dreams are expensive, and Leah was already 3 months behind on rent, working double shifts just to keep the lights on in her one-room apartment. She sighed, glancing at the wall clock. 2 hours left in her shift. Then, the bell above the door jingled. A little girl stepped in first, maybe 6 years old, wearing a pink hoodie too large for her. Her curly hair bounced with each step, and her cheeks were flushed from the cold. Behind her came a man in a long, dark overcoat, clearly trying to shield her from the rain. He had an air about him, something serious and quiet, his eyes tired, like someone who carried too many burdens. They sat in a booth by the window. Leah walked over, notebook in hand, putting on her practiced smile. "Welcome to Rosie's. Can I get you started with something warm?" The man gave a nod. "Just hot chocolate for her." "I'm fine." The girl looked up with bright eyes. "With marshmallows?" Leah grinned. "Extra marshmallows, coming right up." She turned to head back to the counter, but not before noticing something odd. The man didn't even glance at the menu. And when she peeked back, she saw he wasn't talking much either. Just staring out the window as if lost in another world. A few minutes later, Leah returned with the hot chocolate. The little girl's eyes lit up. "Thank you, miss." Leah laughed softly. "You can call me Leah." The girl giggled. "I'm Sophie." "Sophie," Leah repeated with a nod. "That's a beautiful name." The man finally spoke, voice low. "Thanks." Leah nodded and stepped back to give them space. But something about Sophie tugged at her heart. She was small, thinner than she should be, and she kept glancing toward the kitchen as if hoping something else might come her way. Leah's stomach rumbled again. She reached beneath the counter and pulled out her wrapped sandwich. It wasn't much, but... She walked back to the booth and crouched slightly, holding out the sandwich. "Hey, Sophie. I packed this earlier and didn't get a chance to eat. You want it? Tuna with a little mayo." The little girl's eyes widened like someone had just handed her a treasure. She looked at her father, who gave a hesitant nod. "Are you sure?" he asked quietly. Leah smiled. "Positive. I'm not that hungry anyway." Sophie beamed and took it carefully, almost reverently. Watching her bite into it like it was the best thing she'd ever tasted made Leah's throat tighten. She blinked back the sudden emotion. She didn't know why it mattered so much, maybe because she knew what it was like to want and not have. The man watched Leah as she walked back behind the counter. There was something in his gaze now, curiosity, maybe even a hint of gratitude. But he said nothing more. Leah's shift ended 2 hours later. The man and the girl were gone. They'd left a $5 bill on the table. That was it. No name, no thank you note. She shrugged it off. She didn't expect anything. But that night, as she walked home under a drizzle, her thoughts kept returning to Sophie and her soft little voice. To the man who looked like he hadn't smiled in years. She didn't know that her life had just shifted course. The next day. The rain had cleared but left behind a muddy haze. Leah came in early, as always, tying her hair back and getting the coffee started. When she looked toward the corner booth, her heart skipped. They were back. Sophie waved excitedly. The man nodded again, a little less stiff this time. Hot chocolate? Leah asked. With extra marshmallows? Sophie chirped. Leah brought the drink quickly. She didn't have another sandwich to spare today. But before she turned to leave, the man cleared his throat. "I'm James," he said. "Thank you for yesterday." Leah smiled. It was nothing. He looked at her, as if studying her. Most people wouldn't have. Leah shrugged. Most people don't see hungry kids every day. James tilted his head, clearly wanting to say something but choosing silence instead. They came back the next day. And the day after that. Sometimes James would order coffee. Sometimes not. But always hot chocolate for Sophie. And sometimes, just sometimes, he'd ask Leah about her day. "I'm thinking of taking some online classes," she mentioned once, wiping down a table. "For what?" James asked. "Writing. Or business. I want to open a book cafe one day." James nodded, intrigued. "That's ambitious." Leah laughed. "So is getting through rent this month." It became a ritual. Sophie would rush in first, give Leah a hug now and then. James would sit in the booth, quiet, brooding, but attentive. And Leah, she found herself waiting for them, looking forward to their visits like sunshine through clouds. But one rainy afternoon changed everything. Sophie didn't come in bouncing. She looked pale. Her head drooped against James's chest as he carried her in. Leah rushed from behind the counter. "She okay?" she asked, worry lining her face. James's jaw clenched. "Fever. She's burning up." Leah didn't hesitate. She guided them to the booth, brought cold water, and called her neighbor, who worked as a pediatric nurse. Within minutes, she was on the phone with James's permission, giving him advice, jotting down over-the-counter meds, checking for allergic reactions. James stared at her as if she were an angel. "Why are you doing all this?" he asked once Sophie was resting against the seat. Leah looked at him, confused. "Because she's a little girl. Because you look like you haven't had help in a long time. Because someone should care." James swallowed hard, and for the first time, his eyes looked wet. "She reminds me of her mother," he whispered. "We lost her last year. Car crash." Leah felt a punch to the chest. "I'm so sorry." "I thought I had everything," James said, voice hollow. "Money. Power. A company to run. But none of it matters when you lose the person you love most." Leah didn't say anything. She just sat beside him as Sophie slept, her small hand clutching the hem of Leah's apron. He left a different kind of note that evening. Not money. Not thanks. A business card. James Carter, founder, Carter Tech Innovations. Leah's jaw dropped. The James Carter. One of the youngest tech millionaires in the country. And he'd been here, drinking black coffee, letting his daughter eat her sandwich. Why hadn't he told her? What did it mean? Her fingers trembled as she held the card. There was something scribbled on the back. "Would you let me return the kindness someday? James." End Chapter 1. Backhand index pointing right. Stay tuned for Chapter 2, where Leah's world is turned upside down as she steps into a life she never imagined. Full of surprises, second chances, and a love that heals all wounds. Red Heart. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories that restore your faith in kindness and love. Red Heart. Leah stared at the business card long after James and Sophie had left the diner. She turned it over again and again, as if somehow it might explain the men who had quietly sat in her booth every day for the past 2 weeks, hiding a fortune behind a weathered coat and tired eyes. James Carter. She had heard the name before. Who hadn't? He was the tech genius who had sold his first software company at 23 and now sat on the boards of companies worth billions. He didn't do interviews, didn't flaunt his wealth, and rarely made public appearances. Yet, there he was, in her tiny, run-down diner, drinking cheap coffee and watching his daughter sip hot chocolate like it was the only good thing in the world. The man had always seemed distant, like he'd lived 100 lives and carried them all in silence. Now it made sense. He hadn't been hiding from the world, he had been protecting his daughter. Grieving. trying to remember how to breathe. And somehow, Leah had become part of that breath. 2 days later. James didn't show up the next day. Or the day after. Leah tried not to let it bother her. Maybe Sophie was still sick. Maybe he was busy. But the absence left a quiet ache in the booth by the window, and in her chest. Then, on the third morning, a sleek black car pulled up outside the diner. The kind you only saw in movies or behind velvet ropes at hotel entrances. The door opened, and James stepped out in a tailored suit, his expression unreadable. He walked in like a man with purpose, but not arrogance. He stopped at the counter, looked Leah in the eyes, and said softly, "I owe you more than I can say." Leah smiled awkwardly, drying her hands on her apron. "You don't owe me anything." "I disagree," he said, handing her an envelope. She opened it carefully. Inside was a formal invitation. "You are cordially invited to the Carter Foundation's annual gala. Guest of honor, Leah Miller. Dress code, formal. Car will pick you up at 6 p.m. Leah blinked. "What is this?" James looked almost shy. "You said you wanted to open a book cafe. I thought you might want to meet people who could help make that happen. Investors. Mentors. Or just see a world you've already earned a place in." She didn't know what to say. No one had ever believed in her like that. That evening. Leah stood in front of her mirror, her hands trembling as she adjusted the simple navy blue gown loaned by a friend. She didn't have much, no jewelry, no expensive perfume. Just herself. The car arrived on time. When she stepped inside, her heart pounded so loud she was sure the driver could hear it. But when she arrived at the venue, an elegant glass structure overlooking the city, everything faded into a dream. Crystal chandeliers. Soft music. Waiters carrying silver trays. And then she saw him. James stood at the center of the room, a glass in hand, his hair brushed back, confidence resting lightly on his shoulders. But the moment his eyes found hers, all the money and the people around him melted away. He walked straight to her, offering his arm. "You came," he said. "You invited me," she replied, blushing. All night, he introduced her to people, investors, philanthropists, authors, even a woman who ran a nonprofit for single mothers. Every time he said her name, it was with pride. And when the dinner ended, he led her to the rooftop, where fairy lights hung like stars. There, under the glow of the city, he finally spoke the words she didn't expect. "I've been running for a long time, Leah. Since my wife died, I haven't let anyone in. I thought Sophie was all I had left. And then I met you." Leah's throat tightened. "James. I watched you give a stranger's child your only sandwich. I watched you care for my daughter like she was your own. I watched you, every day, bring light into our lives without even knowing it." She shook her head, overwhelmed. "I'm just a waitress, James." He stepped closer. "No. You're the woman who reminded me what love looks like. You're the reason my daughter laughs again. You're the reason I stopped drinking coffee just for caffeine, and started drinking it hoping I'd see your smile." Leah's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll let me in," James whispered. "Say you'll come with us tomorrow. Sophie wants to take you to her favorite park." Leah laughed through the tears. "That's hard to say no to." Weeks passed. The diner still needed her, but so did Sophie. James never asked her to quit her job. He never tried to buy her off. Instead, he sat in her booth every day like always, only now, he brought her fresh pastries. Sometimes flowers. Once, a second-hand copy of her favorite childhood book. They weren't dating at first. Not in the typical way. But something was growing, something gentle and sure. One evening, after Leah helped Sophie finish a school project at James's penthouse, the little girl pulled Leah aside. "Can you stay forever?" she asked softly. Leah knelt down, brushing a curl from Sophie's cheek. "If your daddy wants me around, I'd love to." Sophie grinned. "He does. He talks about you when he thinks I'm not listening." Leah blushed. "Oh really? He said you're his second chance." Leah's heart nearly burst. 1 month later. James invited her to dinner at a quiet vineyard outside the city. Just the two of them. Candlelight. A soft breeze. A table nestled among vines under string lights. And as the sun dipped low, he reached into his pocket. "I'm not proposing," he said quickly, chuckling. "Not yet. But I want to give you this." He placed a small velvet box in front of her. Inside was a key. "To your cafe," he said. Leah looked up, stunned. "I bought the space on 5th and Maple. You've talked about it every day. It's yours. Fully funded. You run it, name it, build it your way. All I ask is that you put a bookshelf for children in the corner, with one chair just for Sophie." Leah covered her mouth with her hand. "James. I can't accept this." "Yes, you can," he said gently. "Because you gave me more than a sandwich, Leah. You gave me back my life. My daughter's smile. A reason to dream again." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "You're serious?" He nodded. "Deadly." She laughed, sobbed, then kissed him without another word. The stars above witnessed something real that night. A healing heart. A humble girl. A new family forming not from riches, but from quiet moments and true love. 6 months later. The grand opening of the Bookmark Café was filled with laughter and light. There were flowers on the tables, second-hand novels on the shelves, and a small kid's corner with pillows and a worn-out rocking chair. Sophie sat in that corner, reading aloud as Leah brewed coffee behind the counter. James stood in the doorway, watching the two girls he loved most with a soft, quiet smile. Leah looked up at him and grinned. "Still think I'm just a waitress?" He walked forward, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "You're my miracle." End of story. Backhand index pointing right. If this story touched your heart, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, can change a life. Just like Leah's sandwich changed everything for one little girl and her millionaire father. #Stay kind, #emotional stories, #unexpected love, sparkling heart. The Bookmark Café had been open for 3 months now, and business was booming. Not because Leah had a massive marketing budget, she didn't. And not because James Carter funded it, although that helped. It was because Leah had created something rare, a place that felt like home. There were shelves of books people could borrow and return without rules. There were handwritten notes stuck in old novels from strangers, saying things like, "This book changed my life," or, "You matter more than you know." Parents brought their kids for story time in the kids' corner. Elderly couples sipped tea at the same table every morning. College students lingered in the back booth, poring over textbooks and oat milk lattes. And Leah, she smiled more than ever. But beneath that smile still lived a nervous heart. Because falling in love with someone like James Carter was easy. Staying in his world. That felt like something she hadn't earned. One morning, Leah stood behind the counter rearranging pastries when she overheard 2 women at a corner table whispering. "That's the girl who owns it. Didn't she used to wait tables at Rosie's? And now she's dating James Carter?" Leah turned away before they saw her expression fall. She wasn't ashamed of where she came from. But part of her still feared the old voices, ones that whispered she didn't belong. That she was just him. That evening, she didn't bring it up at dinner. But James noticed anyway. "What happened?" he asked softly as they sat on the balcony of his penthouse later that night, watching Sophie color with crayons on the rug. Leah shook her head. "Nothing. Just some women talking." He waited. She sighed. "They said I used to be a waitress. Like it was a bad thing." James leaned closer, his voice serious. "Leah. You were never just anything. You were the girl who gave her last sandwich to a child. The woman who made my daughter laugh again. You didn't come into my life to impress anyone. You changed it." Leah looked at him, eyes glassy. "But do you really see me in your world? All those rich friends, galas, private planes. I still live in a 1-bedroom apartment." "I don't care if we live in a shoebox," James said, taking her hand. "What matters is that I can't imagine life without you in it." Sophie looked up and grinned. "I can't either." Leah smiled through tears. I love you both. But I still feel like I'm catching up. James kissed her hand. Then let me walk beside you. Not ahead. Not behind. Right beside. A storm, a setback, and a truth. 2 weeks later, disaster struck. A pipe burst in the cafe's kitchen overnight. Leah arrived early the next morning to find water everywhere, soaked floorboards, collapsed ceiling tiles, and books floating like lost memories. She dropped to her knees, heart shattered. Her dream. Everything she'd built. It was drowning right in front of her. James showed up within the hour, already on the phone with contractors. I'll pay for the repairs, he said immediately. But Leah stood up, voice shaking. No. I want to do this myself. Leah. No, she said again, stronger this time. You've given me more than enough. Let me earn this. Please. James stared at her, then nodded slowly. Then we do it your way. But not alone. I'll be right here. Every step. And he meant it. That week, the entire community showed up. Regulars, neighbors, friends. They mopped floors. They dried books. A group of college students built a new kids' corner with their own savings. Sophie helped paint the sign again, bright yellow letters with her tiny handprint on the corner. When the cafe reopened, there was a framed photo behind the counter. A soaked Leah laughing in the rain, paintbrush in hand, with James and Sophie beside her. Underneath the photo, a quote. We didn't build this with money. We built it with love. The proposal that wasn't just a proposal. That spring, James asked Leah to come with him and Sophie on a trip to the coast. They stayed in a quiet house overlooking the water. Bonfires at night. Pancakes in the morning. Long walks with Sophie collecting seashells and giggling endlessly. One night, James took Leah's hand and led her down to the beach. There was no crowd. No press. Just flickering lanterns in the sand, and Sophie building a sandcastle nearby. James got down on one knee.